Pieteikums ir ārkārtīgi interesants. Runāt par radošumu ir tas pats, kas dejot par arhitektūru.
Kind of. Yeah, but unfortunately I changed the title. I hope you don't mind.
Really?
Last minute,
Yeah,
just on the
switch.
way to the conference. Hello, everyone.
You switched to wine drinking.
No, I didn't switch to wine drinking. No, I didn't. Later
Go
on,
ahead.
I will do this. Yeah. So I think I have another 30 seconds before the slideshow begins. Just a few more words then about myself. So my name is Fion Dobbin. And I switched to the topic of play and empathy as a driver for product development. And with a background myself, I'm an industrial designer. So I studied industrial design, made my master at the University of Arts in Berlin. But quite seldom I actually work as a classical industrial designer. I think the last product which I designed, it's nearly 1.5 years ago, it was for Dom Vetro. It's an Italian-American shades company. And I'm still waiting that they're going to release it. So finally, when they release it, then I will be the king of hipsters in Riga with my own shades. So I'm looking for this. And mostly, actually, I work in the field of innovating and inventing. And I've worked over the last years for several companies, developing patents for companies such as General Motors. And often, mostly, I also work as a conceptor. So I work for event agencies in Latvia, for marketing agencies in Latvia, and also for abroad. And one of my biggest projects I was working on was for Zirk. It's the leading event agency in Germany. And we did a pitch together, which we thankfully won, with a budget of 4.5 million. And we were allowed to design the BASF Roadshow. I think you all know the company BASF. It's a chemical company. I think BASF is everywhere. It's in the plastic bottles. It's probably also in your body for the water and so on. So BASF, a huge chemical company. And they always tour every few years around the whole globe to show their newest innovations. And so I did the concept for this roadshow. And I work as a teacher. So I work at the Stockholm School of Economics as a lecturer and program director, where I teach creativity or creative thinking, creative leadership. And I teach entrepreneurship and social business. And also I travel through the whole world, teaching in Bahrain, in Malaysia, in Mexico, and so forth. And so I'm a little bit like a song and dance man. That's actually the thing which I do. So I travel around, hold little speeches, do little workshops. And the other things which I'm doing, I'm an entrepreneur. So I started several small companies. One of those companies is called Mamu, which I'm going to talk later about. And the recent and newest company which I started, it's called Not Perfect Education. It hasn't been launched yet, so it's going to be launched. There will going to be a launch event in spring. And it's a joint venture with the leading branding agency called Not Perfect, and one of the most influential branding agency in the Baltics. And our goal is to bring an hands-on learning experience to corporates, academia, and organizations. And what I think is for me the most important motor of my passion from all the things I'm doing, it's always about touching people. Yeah? So this really keeps me moving forward. And it's about sharing. Sharing is what you're doing. And behind everything which I do is, of course, creativity, the basis of what I'm doing. So creativity is, for me, very important. And when I talk about creativity, it's very important not to misunderstand it with crazytivity. Yeah? People often do it. They think, I'm going to be now very creative. I'm going to design a car. And then they design the car in such a way that has triangular wheels, for example. And think that looks very creative. But it's not. It's useless. For me, creativity is always about taking existing knowledge and putting it into a new context. Yeah? Being able to play with resources, with knowledge which you have. And creativity is also, for me, it's the result actually of having a playful mind, of being able to play and being able to dance around in that sense. But on the other hand, talking about creativity is a little bit like dancing actually about architecture. So it's something which looks kind of stupid and it doesn't make too much sense. It's a little bit like learning to eat, yeah? Learning to eat or using a knife and fork, this is nothing which you can learn from the book. Yeah, this is nothing you can learn from the book. Probably you could learn it from a book, but I guess it would be a very, very boring book if there would be written you have to take your fork and then with 0.2 kilometers per hour and with a certain angle you target your sausage and then you put it in your mouth. It would be a boring book. Yeah? And creativity or also learning how to eat, yeah, always comes in with a little bit of mess. That's the way how you learn to eat, and also that's the way how you learn how to become an entrepreneur or how to become creative. And playfulness at such, it always helped at least myself to find my passion. So before I understood what I really want to do in life, before I understood that I really want to be a designer, that I really want to be a lecturer and a teacher, I think I did quite a lot of things. So I worked I was an underground rapper in Germany. Yeah? When I was an MC in Germany, this is so long time ago that we were selling our music on tapes. And I was literally producing my music in the cellar of a friend of a father, and we had a four-tape recorder, like really, really ancient technology nowadays. I worked as a farmer, a pizza baker, driving range master, carrier, builder, barman, actor, carpenter, salesman, even as a street clown, and so forth. And doing all those things and realizing that I'm really bad in all those things really helped me to understand what I really want to do in life. Yeah? And this is, I want to design, and I want to play, and I want to teach. And most people are really afraid of playfulness, yeah? So they kind of panic. They have panic because of this. And I think this is always the fear of failure. That's why people don't want to be creative. That's why they don't want to be playful. That's why they don't want to be an entrepreneur, because they're afraid of going a new path, because there's always a chance of failing. Yeah? So creativity and failure always go hand in hand. And I think what is really important, sometimes you really just have to turn on your inner Nike shoe, and you just have to go out and you just have to do it. And that's what creativity and entrepreneurship is about. And when we talk about this guy, I guess everyone knows this guy. Everyone knows him. Like, this is Richard Branson, yeah? And Richard Branson, he's one of the most successful entrepreneurs on this planet. I mean, this guy, he's like hallucinating business opportunities around every corner. I think, meanwhile, he's created around 500 companies. And many of these companies actually failed. Yeah? And this is very important to understand. I want to show you a few of his companies where he failed, and Virgin Brides. Yeah? So he really went into the brideware market, and he failed. I think he had to close down the company after 3 months. First of all, it's the wrong branding, kind of doesn't function nowadays anymore. I think the small amount of the brides nowadays are still virgin. But the real reason why he failed, in my opinion, because Richard Branson shaved off his beard and he wore a bride dress himself. And after seeing this picture, yeah, you don't want to marry anymore. Yeah? It's terrible. That's why I'm permanently engaged in 7 years, yeah? Because I saw this picture. Virgin Pulse, also terrible companies of his. And this was the time when he started. Virgin Pulse was the time when Steve Jobs brought out the iPod player. And the iPod and the management of Richard said, hey, we should compete with Steve Jobs, with Apple. There's a lot of meat out there on the MP3 player market. And so they brought out this whole collection of plastic junk to compete against Apple. And I think the competitor for the iPod was this thing. Yeah? I think it didn't even really have a display. It had 128 megabytes memory, and it had a music store, online music store with around 10,000 songs, which went offline again after half a year. And they failed. So if I would be Richard Branson, I would fire the whole management who told me to do this. And then actually I would hire them again, and then I would fire them again just to make a statement within the company. Virgin Coke, yeah? He also tried to produce Coca-Cola. He made this fake Coca-Cola imitate. And you know, there's always a secret ingredients in Coca-Cola. Let's call it X7 or something like this. And for some reason, the scientists of Virgin thought it should taste of toilet stone and peppermint, and also they failed. No one took him really serious. I think it died on the way between Poland and Germany, so it never reached Latvia, so we are very, very lucky, and no one really took him serious. Yeah? The last one, which I want to show from his great failures, is called Virgin Wear. And he went into the underwear market. And I don't have to explain you why he failed. He really created the erotic anthrax. I mean, this is okay to have such an underwear as long as you never have sex, because this is really, really terrible. That's why he failed, yeah? And I think he deserved it, yeah? And the thing is, they had those shops in London who were selling those underwear for like 10 pence a piece. So there were people buying those bags of those underwear. So there's still people in London walking around with Virgin Wear underwear. And yeah, so what is very important is just that you have to accept failure. Yeah, it's very important, and this is also how you actually are working as a designer. So playfulness is, for me, as such, it's a motor for creating something, and it's also the reason why I create something, because I want to share playfulness with other people. Yeah, and I want to give them a playful experience. And a project which I developed during my studies time at the University of Art with my friend Joscha Broser, was called the Fragment Store. And the fragment store was dealing with 52 little manufacturers in Berlin. And there were all those beautiful manufacturers, lampshade makers and metal workers and carpenters and so forth. And we created on the end a lamp collection. And this is one of 350 million lamps we created. It's really true. We created over 350 million different types of lamps. And we did it in such a way that we actually created 16 different kinds of lamp pieces with different kind of manufacturers. So there's the shades, there's the foot, there's the middle parts, and so on. And they have those little magnetic clips, and you can click them together. It's like the Lego of lamps, yeah? And the electricity is flowing through the shades, flowing through the feet, and so on. So you can create your own lamp. And what is beautiful about this, that each lamp or each lamp fragment had to be collected from a different manufacturer in Berlin. So in the end, when you had your product, you didn't only buy a product, but you also had a story, your own personal story, because suddenly the architecture of the way going to this manufacturer, the charisma of the workshop owner, and the smell of it all became part of this lamp. And you had your own unique story and one of 350 million different variations of a lamp. The other part which I want to talk about, and the other project I want to talk about, it's called Bubbles. And Bubbles was an outcome for Zirk, which is one of those leading event agencies in Germany. And they asked me if I couldn't design some children events for them. So I started to design bubble machines, because I knew children love bubbles. Yeah? And so we started designing different bubble machines. This is like a bubble catapult. You can catapult bubbles away. Then we had this huge wheel spinning. And then we made this bubble machine, which are partly from a bike. Where you have this thing which you have to spin, and then something is moving and the bubbles are coming out there, and there's a little ventilator sending the bubbles into the air. And when I told my wife about this project, she went to her mother and told her mother about it, and she misunderstood it. Yeah? She said, oh, that's interesting. He's making small little bikes which produce bubbles. And I said, no, that's not what I'm doing, but that's a cool idea. I will do this. And so I created, this is the outcome of miscommunication. So I think it's very important to talk about the things you're doing, also when it was a total not reaction which I wouldn't have thought about. Yeah? And another really strong driver for me as a designer and also as a teacher is empathy. I think empathy is one of the most important skills you need as a designer. Yeah? You always should do something which is user-centered. You should work together with the people. And having a strong empathy also helps you to work on social tensions. And that's the part I want to talk about now. The first time I started working on social tensions, I think that's nearly 9 years ago, I started working for a company. It's called Jeff Gel. And it was a social business before there was Food Dr. Yunus, the official term of social business. A friend of mine, he started this company producing sneakers in Senegal, which were produced from people who are living under terrible circumstances. And they asked me if I couldn't create a little campaign. So it was the first time I went into communicating social business, communicating social tensions. And I created in Switzerland a hip-hop jam, because I still at that time had all my underground hip-hop contacts. Most of them became actually very, very famous. And we had this huge event. We had all these amazing artists, and I think on the end only 20 people turned up to the concert. So the company unfortunately went bankrupt after my advice. But as I said, failure and creativity go hand in hand. A project which I did myself at the Art University in Riga, because I did my Erasmus here several years ago. And I was supposed to design a chair. Yeah? And it was in the time where I was supposed to design a chair all around the cities, all the big metropoles. There were this furniture popping up, anti-homeless furniture. I guess you all know them. It's furniture where homeless people can't lie down, where they can't really sit for a long time. And the reason they design it, to chase away the homeless from touristic, really frequented places. Yeah? And I thought that's perverted. I think that's not what design should be for, and that's not the solution of the problem. I thought designers should solve this problem. And I created an anti-normal people bench. So we created a system which we put into the city of Riga, and it destroyed the function of the bench, and it turned it into a shelter for homeless. And this was just there to provoke a dialogue and to make people think about the topic rather than just chasing the people away. And the last part, actually, which I did at the university in Riga was called Tantalus, and was also a little bit reflecting the a situation which I came across here from people being heavy drinkers, lying in parks, which I didn't see before in such cases. And I was inspired a little bit from the Greek mythology, the story of Tantalus, who is sent to the Hades, and always when he wants to eat, the tree goes away. When he wants to drink, the water disappears. And it kind of reminded me of those guys lying on the benches in the parks where I live near Argenskans. There's a park, you often can see them lying there. And I just wanted to do a sculpture dealing with the situation. So I created a bottle from porcelain, non-usable. When you put it down, it breaks and goes into small pieces. And through working in this field and getting more hungry about it, I decided at one point to use my master thesis to work on a huge problem, on the problem of 2.6 billion people who don't have access worldwide to sanitation. And as you know, there's many people are dying every year. Millions of people are dying because of infection illnesses which are spreading. And young women stop going to school at a certain age because there's no toilets for them. And there's also no money to build up a sanitation system as we know it, where we flush our poop with water. Yeah? So I thought, all right, I can use my skills and I can find a kind of solution for this problem. And when you look at the map, all the places which are really in orange, this is the places which are the hardest. And we decided to go and work for the Indian market. And one thing which we knew for sure, of course, it had to be a toilet unplugged because the people were living in cramped conditions. There was no sewage system, and the people we were designing for, they had less than $1 a day. And of course, also there was a lack of water. So toilet unplugged, something which you can put into your living room and just use it. This is something which we wanted to design. The big problem is, of course, when you have a toilet unplugged in your living room, how do you make sure if somebody is using it and it kind of gets full that he doesn't take this toilet tank and just pours it straight into his neighbor's garden? Yeah? How can you animate someone to bring his poop from A to B, somewhere where it can be disposed? And that was the big question always, how to bring the shit from A to B. We knew it couldn't be such a toilet as we have it. It had to be a squatting toilet. So I asked friends of mine. We did some ergonomic research. All my friends always ask me, Fion, stop showing the slides all around. This is really embarrassing because many of them are famous designers now and they don't like that I show them how they pretend to shit on a piece of paper. But what was interesting as an outcome, all the ergonomic research, which I did actually in the laboratory of my university, was absolutely useless because if you look at the foot positionings of people in Germany using a toilet and if you look at the foot position of people using it in India, all the things which I have done were not used for anything. And I started building those small little prototypes from paper. I showed them to my professor, and he says, Fion, you won't get anywhere when you do it like this. Yeah? You really have to become one of those 2.6 billion people. And then I did something which is called prototyping for empathy. Yeah? So I stopped using my toilet, and I created all these different prototypes which were in my flat. They were all different toilet prototypes, so some functioned, some didn't function, some were smell-proof, some weren't smell-proof. It was a very lonesome time in Berlin because my friends stopped visiting me. They thought it's very disgusting. My wife even refused to visit me from Latvia. She didn't come to Germany at that time. She said she will visit me again when I stop this shit. And the main part actually was this shit transportation tank. It's something you can roll, yeah? And always when I was presenting my designs at the university, normally you put your design on the table, and people come very interested, come very, very close. That's very interesting. When I did it, the students tried to sneak out of the classroom. Yeah, they thought it's disgusting. And just a few days before I had my master thesis presentation, I went into my little office at the university, and I had exactly this tank there, and it was full of shit and piss and everything, and it was rotting there for several months. And with my foot, I stepped against it, and the whole thing exploded. Yeah, and I've never seen so far 300 students leaving in panic the university building. My professor was giving an interview to a famous TV station just beside me in his office, and I remember how he was showing him the way out of the room, and they were walking like this with the cameras because the smell kind of went up, and when you went down, it wasn't too bad. Yeah? So it was a very good PR for my master's thesis because people were really queuing up to see what kind of crazy things we're doing. And on the end, we had a very simple system where the system consisting of two parts, one part which always stays at home and one part which helps you to transport up to 80 kilos of shit without any stress. And we use quite sophisticated technologies such as nanotechnology. and so on to make a really good functional design. But still, we always had the question how to bring the shit from A to B, because we knew, all right, we can use it with some kind of elephants, can be transported, but why would anyone do it? Huh? Why would you take it? I probably also would just pour it out of my window, like they used to do it in the old times. Now, I think in London there was always this night soil man, or people were pouring out their night pots onto the street, was a common thing. And so we went to India and we started doing a research because I really wanted to understand how can I create an object of desire? How can I create something which is, you know, a must-have? Because I wanted to design something which people wanted to spend money on. Yeah? And how do you convince someone to buy a toilet when he's defecating in the open? His father was defecating in the open. His grandfather, and like from generations to generations, people are shitting on the street. So what do you tell them? Well, you can go around and you can make an awareness campaign and say, well, there's viruses and they're spreading through infections which you can get when you walk barefoot through feces. You shouldn't do that. We thought, all right, we have to find something which is more simple to understand, which is more easier. And in the research, what was very important also that we design actually something which is beautiful for them. And we couldn't speak the Hindi language, so we had this kind of design book, design guide, where we asked people if they could tell us what do they prefer more. Do they like horses more or donkeys? Which colors do they like? Which kind of, do they prefer Nokia phone or an iPhone or Walkman or a boombox? So we started doing those interviews. Here's my friend Noah Lerner, who had worked on this project. She's just doing there an interview with 2 guys in a small remote area. What is interesting, if you do this kind of marketing research interviews on the streets like in Riga and Berlin, also people run away, they don't have time for you. In India, like this is like 10 seconds later, and everyone wants to participate. And I said, I want to talk to those crazy shit guys, yeah? So that was very interesting. And while we were doing this research, we came across an NGO called Sulab International. And Sulab International is working with public toilets. So they create public toilets, and people pay a few cents to enter those toilets and to use them. And some of those toilets were connected to a biodigester. And a biodigester is turning any kind of organic material into gas. And there we understood how can we animate to bring people bring the shit from A to B, because every one of you is producing around 300 grams of shit per day. This is so much energy if you turn it into methane gases that on the end you can turn it into electricity that you could run an iPod for 4 hours. So think about this the next time, all the great music you could play, yeah, when you go to the music. So on the end, this is our prototype which we had on the end. It kind of didn't really work out the way we wanted. And the moment when my toilet exploded, I promised myself I have enough of this. I want to do something completely different, because really I was covered in shit all around. It was so disgusting and terrible. And anyway, a spin-off of the Shit Rules diploma of mine is a company. It's called X-Runner. And they moved from India to Nepal. There's a few hundred families, as I understood, using their toilet system. So they're just testing it on a small market at the moment. And it has a little bit different business system behind it, but also it has the attractiveness of a service connected. And they also solve the problem of bringing shit from A to B. The last project I want to talk about, it's called Mamu. Because through working in this project, Shit Rules, I got quite a lot of attention in the scene of social entrepreneurs. It was quite a ridiculous, provocating concept. And so I got to know this guy, and I started working for an organization of him, which is called the Grameen Creative Lab. This guy, he's Dr. Mohammed Yunus. He's one of the most important persons in the history of economics. He developed the Grameen Bank, giving out microcredits to poor people. Yeah? With this, he helps them to become self-sustainable, to become small micro-entrepreneurs. He helped millions of people. He started very, very small, in a small hut in Bangladesh in the slums with 10,000 euros capital, which he got himself from the bank. He started giving small loans. Meanwhile, he gave already credits out worth millions. They have a payback rate of 98% of the people pay back the loans, yeah? And it's quite amazing when you see then the people from the Grameen family who a few years ago were begging on the street, and then at one point they have enough money to send their daughter to study in New York and become a lawyer, yeah? And he got the Peace Nobel Prize for this. But beside creating the Grameen Bank and the system of giving microfinances to people in need, he came up with a concept of social business. And a social business is a mixture of an NGO, a non-government organization, which is fighting against the tension in society. The problem is that an NGO always needs donations. They run on donations. So you give them money and they do something good, yeah, while spending the money. And then we have businesses which are totally not which are totally self-sustainable, but they're not selfless. Yeah? And so what Dr. Yunus did, he combined the selflessness of an NGO with the self-sustainability, yeah, of a traditional business, where the company, the NGO as such, is running on its own steam. Yeah? And the outcome was Grameen Social Business, which is based actually on 7 principles. There's 7 very, very strict principles, and I kind of made a short summary of those principles by showing you it in the case of a company which I created here in Latvia. The company is called Mamu. And what we are doing there is we are working with mothers who have to combine childcare and earning money, but who can't find a job due to the fixed working hours on the job market. And so what we are doing is we're training those mothers. We're showing them how to produce high-quality fashion accessories. We show them how to set up micro-production companies. We give them textiles. And then whenever they go home, and the children are sleeping or playing somewhere, they have then flexible working hours where they can produce our items for us. What is very important for us that we are really creating a sound business, yeah? That people buy our products because they think this is attractive. We don't want that people buy our products because they think, oh, the poor mamas, I will buy it now. Christmas is coming soon and I feel bad, so I buy this horrible product for my friends. It was very important for us to create something which is really beautiful, and that's also why we're working with all those top-performing creatives. This is a collection we made, for example, by Maren Rolls, which I guess most of you probably know. It's a wonderful world-class design duo from Latvia, and they created a scarf collection for us. We worked together with Ernest Alexander. This is our last collection we actually did, and he's the leading men's fashion designer from the States, has Latvian roots, and he made this men's leather sleeve and hats and scarf collection for us. And meantime, actually, we have had a little shift in the business strategy because we understood it takes so much effort. Of course, it's fun to cast the models, to do the photo shooting. It's great to work with all those designers together, but it's so much effort. And if I would have to run Mamu for full-time with a fashion approach, it would mean I would have to give up all the other things I'm doing, yeah? Because you have to go to the trade show, you have to go to all these exhibitions and so forth. And we noticed, all right, I don't want to do this anymore. We can't do this anymore. So we went into production, and now at the moment there's a shift from being a fashion label to a design agency, and we do a lot of production for labels in Germany and Sweden and Latvia. We do a lot of corporate gifts. This is, for example, products we are producing for Lolot, which is one of the most hyped design agencies from Berlin. We do all sorts of little items which need a lot of handcrafts while producing them. And of course, it's also for us important to benefit others. Yeah? As a social business, you can't create something good on the one side and then the end of the factory, you're polluting the environment or all the animals are dying, or you can't create something and then in the same time, while creating jobs, you take jobs away of people. Yeah? So we always try to stay as local as possible, use local materials, use local resources. That's very, very important for us. And the last point which I want to talk about, this is really the most important, and this is the reason why I do all of this kind of social business and I work as a social designer, because it brings you a lot of joy and it brings you a lot of fun and it brings you a lot of happiness. Yeah? Dr. Yunus always said, creating business brings you happiness and creating social business brings you super happiness. And I want to show you the last project to give you there a point on what I'm talking about. We did a street knitting campaign in the city of Wiesbaden where our mothers, they knitted 2,500 objects in the city of Wiesbaden with different designs, all made from wool. And we liked it so much, so we went through the city, we did all the street knitting, we enjoyed it so much. Oops, a little bit too fast. We enjoyed it so much that at one point we decided, all right, we want to look the same, and we made this kind of suits for ourselves. And we had to look that one day, then Yunus came to Wiesbaden, and he visited us there. And there also you can see also his motivation, do it with joy. They are one of the most important people in the history of the economics, is wearing one of our funny full-body Latvian socks. And I think that's where I want to end my little speech on social business and what drives me of being a designer and what drives me of being a teacher. So whatever you do, do it with joy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fion. Thank you.